Hi there. My name is Jeremy Jacobs, and this is my wife, Melissa Jacobs. And we together lead the Bound for Life chapter in St. Louis. We've been doing so since August of 2007. So as of this recording, we are in our 17th year of running the St. Louis chapter of Bound for Life. We are also the regional coordinators for Life. We decided to make this video to tell one of our favorite stories. It's one we've told a number of times to some groups, but we've never really taken the time to record a video, so we figured now was a good time to do so. So we're gonna meander around a little bit as we tell this story. We want to give a lot of background, and since there are no time constraints here on YouTube, we figured we would tell the long-form version of this story.
And Shep, I would just notice one other thing. The Attorney General of Missouri has now just tweeted that it's the first state to let its trigger laws spring into action.
A little bit of history. Missouri became a state in 1821. And just 14 years later, in 1835, we became the first state in the nation to ban abortion within its borders. And this is our story of how prayer made us again the first state in the nation to ban abortion within its borders for the second time.
So through all this time of leading Bound for Life in the very beginning, the first couple of years really, we would go and we would stand on the sidewalk and we would pray. And I was praying, God, break my heart with the things that break yours, but I never actually shed a tear. And that bothered me because I felt like this is a deep, this is something that grieves God's heart deeply. And why can I not cry over it? Why don't I have tears? And it really bothered me. And at the same time, I was really struggling. As much as we had said yes to the Lord and taking up this call to stand for the life and for the children in the womb, I really struggled with surrendering my own womb to God's plans and really struggled with control over that area of our family, and really felt like the Lord was kind of wanting me to just give that to Him and surrender and be willing to say yes to children in our own family, in our own home. And it was something that for many years I kind of wrestled with the Lord about. And then in 2010, I finally had come to the place in my just walk with the Lord and my wrestling with Him where I said, you know what? It's yours. Like, I completely surrender to you. God, give us as many children as you want. And I completely took my hands off. I said, I will welcome as many children as you want to bring into our home. And shortly after that, commitment, that promise to the Lord, I, shocker of all shockers, got pregnant. And we were really excited. It was really a joyous occasion. I didn't have any apprehension as I had had with previous pregnancies where I felt like, oh, what are we going to do? Like, how am I going to handle another one? How is this going to work? With this time around, I really from the get-go was excited and felt like this is a blessing. I'm so grateful to the Lord that He's, heard my prayer and this is how He's blessing us. Well, we went in for our 8-week ultrasound, and at that ultrasound discovered that there was no heartbeat and that I would be having a miscarriage. And so a few weeks later, after that, I did have a miscarriage. It was incredibly traumatic for me, physically and just emotionally and spiritually. I really felt like I had been betrayed. I felt like the Lord had betrayed my trust and my confidence in Him. And it took me a while to come to the place where I could trust again. Through that, the Lord, it was just so gracious, even though I was having trust issues and really felt like I had been abandoned. I hadn't. I look back on that time now and I realize, like, when I was in my darkest hour was where I felt like the closest to Jesus. Like I could feel his presence with me. And even though I would try to push him away because I was hurt and angry, he never would leave my side. And so I look back at that time now with just a fondness of knowing the closeness of Jesus and how close he is to the brokenhearted. But the thing that really happened through that experience is that the Lord gave me tears. The thing that I had been asking for years, why can't I cry? Why can't I shed tears over the shedding of innocent blood? This is something that grieves your heart, Lord, and I'm praying and I've asked you to give me your heart, but I don't have tears. Well, it was the miscarriage and actually walking through the pain of losing a child in the womb and feeling God's heart of love for that child that had just barely begun to grow, that really opened the floodgate and brought on the tears. So a few months later, after that experience, we got pregnant again. And a pregnancy after a loss can be really challenging to walk through. It can be something that you really struggle with fear and doubt and just worry and anxiety. And I knew from talking to other friends that had gone through miscarriages that I would need a strong foundation to stand upon if I was going to make it through this pregnancy. And through that, I just began to seek the Lord and I asked him for a verse. Like, I need a promise from your word. It can't just be something that I've thought up on my own. I have to have something that's a solid foundation. And through that, the Lord gave me Psalm 126. So Psalm 126 says, when the Lord brought back his exiles to Jerusalem, it was like a dream. We were filled with laughter and we sang for joy. And the nations said, what amazing things the Lord has done for them. Yes, the Lord has done amazing things for us. What joy. Restore our fortunes, Lord, as streams renew the desert. Those who plant in tears will harvest with shouts of joy. They weep as they go to plant their seed, but they sing as they return with the harvest. Those last two verses, Psalm 126, 5 and 6, became my heart's cry throughout the entire pregnancy with our son. And because of those who sow in tears will reap a harvest of joy, his middle name actually means full of joy. And it just really became a promise from the Lord. Every time that I would feel anxious or worried or doubt would creep in through the pregnancy, I would go back to this verse and I would just pray it back to the Lord. God, you promised me that if I would sow in tears, that you would give us a harvest of joy. And it was really meaningful to me because of the tears portion. And because up until this point, I hadn't had tears. But after I did, I cry all the time now. Like pretty much whenever we go to the sidewalk, pray at any clinic, I'll be crying, or at a courthouse, wherever we're at praying for life, there's going to be tears. And that's a big deal to me, because to me, it's an answer from the Lord of my heart cry to him, for me to feel his burdens in this area of life. And so I now can look back at that experience of having the miscarriage and seeing how God has used that for good and to bring us to where we are now.
So now, with a lot of background covered, we dive into the meat of the story. If you're not familiar with Bound for Life, it was started in 2004 on the steps of the U.S. Supreme Court. And we've always been focused on prayer for the unborn, but specifically focused on the area of government. So as a chapter, we've always paid attention to what's going on in the court system and what's going on in governments within the 8 states of the 8th Circuit, which is based here in St. Louis. Governmental intercession is foundational to who we are as Bound for Life. At the end of 2018, there was an explosive interview done by Governor Northam of Virginia at the time. And he was in the midst of a radio interview and was asked about what would happen if an abortion procedure failed and the child was born. and he basically advocated for infanticide, suggesting that since the original intent was to kill the child, they should just go ahead and kill the child anyway after it was born.
If a mother is in labor, I can tell you exactly what would happen. The infant would be delivered. The infant would be kept comfortable. The infant would be resuscitated if that's what the mother and the family desired. And then a discussion would ensue between the physicians and the mothers.
Those wicked statements resulted in an eruption across our country where states began to move to pass heartbeat bills. The movement to do so also began in our state as it convened in early January of 2019.
So because of what we do with Bound for Life, with Praying for Government, we try to keep ourselves informed on what is happening in our state government and the federal governments, which is why we had been watching other states pass heartbeat bills, and why we were feeling like it was Missouri's time to do so, and maybe just a little bit frustrated that Missouri wasn't doing it yet. So in February of 2019, I just happened to be in our capital city. I was with another organization at the time that was doing kind of a lobby day for pro-life measures and tax credits and things. And I had volunteered to go because I, at the time, was serving on the board of this other ministry. I didn't really know what was happening that day in the Capitol. I wasn't going with the intent of seeing anything happening on any of the House or the Senate floors, because I didn't really think they were going to be doing anything. We were just planning on talking to legislators. So we were being briefed when we got there in the morning before we went and talked to the legislators just about what was happening that day in the House and the Senate, what bills they were going to be talking about. And they said they're going to be hearing a bill called HB 126. And this was my first time hearing that bill. And something that we have learned just because we watch our government is the way that bills are numbered is just based on when they're filed. So this number 126 jumped out at me because if you remember, Psalm 126 is my promise that those who sow in tears will reap a harvest of joy. At this point in 2019, I had been praying and believing in this promise for 9 years. And I really felt like the birth of our son was a first fruits of this promise, but that the Lord had bigger plans because I garden. And so if I plant a bed of, let's say, potatoes, and I get one potato, that's not a harvest. That would be a bad year. So I knew the harvest is not just this one pregnancy that I had that resulted in a live birth after having a miscarriage. The harvest is the ending of abortion. And I took this promise from the Lord seriously, and I had prayed it for 9 years. Lord, you gave me a promise that if I sowed in tears, you would give me a harvest of joy. And to me, the harvest was seeing the ending of abortion in my nation, in my state. And so when I heard the bill number, HB 126, I knew this is something special. This is the Lord reminding me of his promise, because bills are just given a number based on when they're filed. Nobody picked that number. It wasn't like they went and they found my promise in Psalm 126 and they decided to name the bill HB 126. HB just means House bill, and it was the 126th bill that was filed. But to me, that was significant, and so it captured my attention. So all day that day, we're walking around the Capitol, talking to legislators and hearing kind of rumblings and murmurings about what's happening on the House floor. I knew this was a House bill because it was HB 126 and they were in session. And so we were kind of just paying attention all day long as they were doing things on the floor. And then come to find out they were debating the bill on the floor. So all day as we're walking around the Capitol with the group that I was with, I was kind of keeping my ears open to hear what was happening and any rumors about what might be happening on the House floor. And we were able to actually be in the gallery in the House while they were debating this bill. And, because of what we do with Bound for Life and Praying for Government, I always see an open door when it comes to government as an opportunity to pray. So for me, it was exciting, not just because we got to listen to the debate on the floor, but because I could be there in real time, praying in real time as the bill was being debated. And, you never know if they're going to actually get to a vote while you're there. It might take all day. It might take all night. You really don't know. And so all day I was just wondering, are they going to vote on it before I leave? Will I know if it passed or not? Because it was being debated on the floor, which means it had already come out of committee. They were ready to vote, if they got that far. So the end of the day comes, and as we are getting ready to leave, we were walking down the stairs to leave, and somebody came and said, "Did you hear it passed?"
Mr. Clerk, please close the board and tell the vote. By your vote of 110 yes and 44 no, you have truly agreed and finally passed Senate Substitute for Senate Committee Substitute for House Bill 126.
I was are you kidding me? Just tears. And the people I was with were excited too, but they didn't really fully understand why I was so excited, because for me, this was a really huge deal that it had passed the House. But that's only one half. It still had to go to the Senate. And so that is where the battle happened.
So she was there in mid-February when it passed out of the House, and we were one of the first states in the nation to pass a heartbeat bill out of one of the chambers. But then we watched all of these other states, I think 9 states that year passed a heartbeat bill. We watched all these other states pass their heartbeat laws through both chambers of their legislature and then get signed by their governor. And ours was still stuck in the Senate. So we watched week after week as our Senate leadership refused to move on this bill.
So about this time, as we're seeing pretty much no progress on the bill, it was literally stuck. It was, I think, in committee, and they weren't getting it out of committee. And in order for it to be voted on, it has to get out of committee and move to the floor for a full vote. And it just wasn't moving. And this is mid-April, right?
Mm-hmm.
Our Missouri Congress only is in session until usually about mid-May. So we are nearing the end of session. And the way that our state government works is that every year when they begin their session in January, it is like a fresh start. So whatever bills do not get passed by the end of session in May, they're dead. And you just have to start completely over the next year. So as we saw the end of session looming before us, we knew this is getting serious, because if they don't pass it, we're done. It's done for the year. And then next year we have to start all over again. And about this time, I began having dreams. And I had, probably a handful of dreams. And they were all a pretty similar theme. And in the theme of the dream was that I was giving birth, but the baby was stuck. And they were all slightly different, but that was the theme. The baby was stuck and needed help to be born. And I also began just randomly, not from a dream, not for really any reason that I could tell, waking up between 4 and 5 a.m. And I can be a little slow sometimes with the Lord. And so I didn't really quite understand until about the third time that God woke me up between 4 and 5 a.m. Oh, God's trying to get my attention. And I began paying attention. And so we realized with the dreams and the waking up between 4 and 5 a.m., and we just began to pray and seek the Lord. What are we supposed to do? How do we steward this in prayer to see it come across the finish line?
You also had another dream with our state senator.
Yeah, I did. Yeah, so in that dream, at the time, our state senator, the one that represented us where we live, he was spearheading this effort in the Senate. He really was pushing for it. He is very strong pro-life, and we knew he was working hard to try to get this bill across the finish line. And so I had a dream. It was a pretty short dream, but in the dream, I was having breakfast with him, and he was exhausted. He had been awake all night. That was the whole dream. But I knew that the Lord was kind of highlighting him specifically to us. to be praying for, because what he was doing was really hard. It was very taxing on him personally, and was something he needed a lot of strength for. So we were praying for him specifically to have strength and courage and perseverance just to see this through.
So it became clear to us that the Lord was trying to get our attention and wanted us to do something. And we kind of knew, because of the pregnancy nature of the dreams, this likely had something to do with our HB 126 law. So we contacted a couple of friends, shared the dream, and began having discussions about what it was that the Lord wanted us to do.
Oh, and another friend, when we were telling a few of our friends about the dreams that I had had, friends told me that she had a dream, and in her dream I had given birth to a baby that we named Steady Endurance. And so that was another confirmation from the Lord that we needed to really see this through. Like, we're going to need perseverance and endurance to see it through.
So through those conversations, we determined what needed to happen was that for the last 3 weeks of session, we were going to get up every morning that the Senate was in session between the hours of 4 and 5 a.m. and pray for the passage of HB 126. So we gathered a team of about 8 people. These were faithful members of our Bound for Life chapter.
So we all kind of took turns. We had a text chain that we had going, and everybody, we would volunteer to take turns. So it wasn't just one person having to carry the load of waking up and praying from 4 to 5 a.m. for 3 weeks in a row. We alternated, we rotated, and as we would get up and pray, we would text one another, any scriptures that we might have or what we were praying specifically, so that we could continue to pray together in unity. And that was really helpful to have a team and be praying in unity. So whoever was praying, Monday night could look, or Tuesday night could look and see what the Monday night person had prayed. And then they could, pray in agreement with that. And then they would post in our text chain what they had prayed, so that the Wednesday person could be praying in agreement. And so it was a team effort of people that were willing to give up an hour of sleep to get up and pray.
We were also watching the social media accounts of key senators that were trying to push for this legislation for our HB 126 to pass, and looking at what they had to say, because they were occasionally making comments. And so on Wednesday of the last week of session, so 3 days left in session, we began to get news that they were going to bring HB 126 to the floor. So that Wednesday, I was at work, she was at home, and we turned on the audio from our state Senate and began listening, and they did indeed bring that to the floor. But there was a filibuster attempt, and we knew that a lot of the talking on the floor also meant that there was deals happening in back rooms and conversations about how this thing was going to pass, or if it was or wasn't going to pass, what amendments might be added to it. We knew all that was happening behind the scenes while we listened to the Senate audio. And when you listen to the Senate audio, you hear Dr. Seuss being read or whatever, because they're really just wasting
talking about
time.
Weather, asking, what did you have for lunch today?
Yeah.
But that's not really what's happening. Behind the scenes, what's happening is that the representatives, the senators, are making deals. And our concern was that they were going to cut things out of the bill or water down the language. The bill was so well written because we had seen it, we had read it, we had read the text, and we knew it was very well written to the extent that it would hold up in court, which was, it's always a concern with pro-life legislation. There's going to be a court challenge. You kind of can bet on it. It will happen. And so you want to make sure that when the bills are written, that they have language that will hold up to a court battle. And this one we really felt like was worded and written well, that it would hold up to a court challenge. And so that was a concern and something that we prayed into, that they wouldn't be able to water down the language and make it less able to stand up to a court challenge.
Along the way, as it progressed through the Senate, they strengthened what the House had done, and they had added things like a trigger law to that bill so that if Roe would ever be overturned, it would immediately become illegal in our state as well. So I was at work listening to the audio. At least from the audio, not much was moving. I drove home from work listening to the audio. I got home and we ate dinner listening to the audio. Praying the whole time. And we put the kids in bed and then went back to listening to the audio.
And praying.
And
watching the Twitter feeds of some of the senators to see if anything was being posted that could inform our prayers.
Yes. And
about midnight, I think I said to you, I'm really tired, I want to go to bed, but we have to see this through. Wouldn't it be funny if it passed at 4 a.m., because we've been getting up at 4 a.m. to pray? But I said, I really hope not, because I'm really tired. I want to go to bed.
But we continued praying. And like she just said, at 4:01 a.m., they announced that the bill had truly passed in the Senate.
By your vote of 24 aye and 10 no, the bill has received a constitutional majority and is declared passed.
Let's send this over to Aaron O'Neill Hayes, who's been following this breaking story all morning long. And Aaron, what does this mean for women in Missouri?
Well, this has come as quite a shocker this morning. The vote comes after a heated debate at the Missouri Capitol yesterday. It's one of the most restrictive bans on abortion.
And because of HB 126 that was passed in May of 2019.
And our governor signed it.
When the Dobbs decision came out on June 24th, 2022, within 15 minutes, our Attorney General had issued a statement making it illegal to perform an abortion in the state of Missouri. We again became the first state in the nation to have abortion illegal within our borders.
Today is a momentous day. The United States Supreme Court has overturned Roe v. Wade. Individual states will now decide how each will address the abortion issue. Millions of innocent lives will be protected moving forward. However, today is also a somber day. We remember the more than 60 million innocent lives lost in the wake of Roe v. Wade. We honor the 2,362 hearts that stopped beating every day for nearly 50 years. Here in Missouri, the people's voice has already made clear that Missourians respect the sanctity of human life. We believe that without the explicit protection of the right to life, all liberties are under attack, which is why the importance of this day cannot be overstated. I am humbled to be a part of this and the first Attorney General in the country to effectively end abortion. As a long champion for the rights of the unborn and Missouri families, I pledge to continue to fight for our most fundamental right, the right to life. Thank you, and may God bless you and the entire state of Missouri.
To us, the Lord marking that with a literal timestamp on the clock, that we had prayed between 4 and 5 a.m. And then we prayed that last night, all through the night, and when we saw it pass at 4:01 a.m., it was a kiss from the Lord and a clear indication that prayers had won the day. That this was more than just a battle between wits and men and women, senators in our state legislature. But this was a spiritual battle. And our prayers, the prayers of our team for government, had shifted and won the day.
Yeah, and confirmation, like the dream that I had with our state senator, where he was exhausted. We were having breakfast. Like, he was exhausted. He was up all night as well. So later that summer of 2019, after the bill had passed, I was able to talk to our state senator and just kind of express our thanks to him for his strong stand in support of life, and kind of tell him briefly the story that we just told you about how we had prayed and we were praying for him and continued to pray for him as our state senator, and just that we supported him And he began to tell me some things that were happening that night as we had been up praying. And he was telling me some specific things about what was happening in those back rooms and the side rooms, and deals that were being made that we specifically had prayed some things with just the leading of the Holy Spirit. We didn't necessarily have understanding or knowledge of what was actually happening, but just being led by the Holy Spirit. The way that we prayed that night, when I met with him and talked to him later that summer, he confirmed to me that we were spot on in our prayers. And so just being led of the Holy Spirit and being engaged and paying attention, we were shifting things. Like, things were not us, but the Lord through us, partnering with his heart. He shifted things in our government because of our partnership with him in praying things through.
Well, hey, thank you for joining us for our little story time. We really enjoy telling this story, but we're usually a little time constrained and can't tell the full story, so we just thought we'd have some fun and record it all. If you are not familiar with Bound for Life, as we said earlier, we pray for life, specifically in the area of government. And if you're in the St. Louis area, please look us up to come join us at a Rumble or a Siege. We'd love to have you. If you're not, there are chapters around the country that are praying for life and praying for their local legislature or the federal government. So we encourage you to join the fight. Your prayers matter. When we partner with God's heart, it shifts things in the natural, and we can shift and shape history through prayer. God bless.